As George mentioned, my name is Robert Savino, a trustee of the Walt Whitman Birthplace, and we greet you today on behalf of our executive director, Cynthia Shaw, and the Birthplace Association, and welcome you to the fourth series of season 2's triangulation journey, Poets Building Bridges. Poets Building Bridges is produced by Poetrybay Productions for the Walt Whitman Birthplace and led by George Wallace, who has been the resident at the Walt Whitman Birthplace for 12 years now. The Birthplace offers events throughout the year, many of them on Zoom, and I recommend you visit our website for details. In fact, on March 3rd, George will begin his 13th year hosting Walking with Whitman on the first Friday of every month. Again, check the website for the details. I thank all the performers and followers who are joining us on this journey. Heather for being our technical director of operations at the Birthplace. And as always, I thank you, George, for the continuance of this program and for all you do for the Birthplace and for poetry. And now I pass the baton to our host, George Wallace.
Thank you, Robert. As Robert Savino, also a very fine poet, and former Suffolk County Poet Laureate. So I'll echo his words. I would just say that about the Walt Whitman Birthplace, if you're ever in the New York area, it's an hour ride out to Huntington by Long Island Railroad to come to visit the Birthplace, which is well worth it. It's the house that Walt Whitman's father built. He was a developer in the early 19th century. And it's the model house that he used to show off when he was trying to sell people houses that he was building. So it's got all the best materials from 1840, really nicely hung windows and all just like the best stuff from that era. And he lived here till the age of 3, and then they moved to Brooklyn, where his father continued to try to make it as a builder. But the Whitman family was, well established in the West Hills area. A number of relatives, and also the Van Velser family, which is a maternal family from here across the Cold Spring Harbor and into Nassau County. So there's a lot of local lore. The Walt Whitman Birthplace was actually used as a storage area for, and as a place for farmers to keep their stuff, and then they turned it into a place for migrant workers to live in. This is going up into the 1950s when it was realized that the house didn't have this connection to Walt Whitman. At that point, the state stepped in and said, we'd like to purchase this and preserve it. There's a lot of debate back and forth in the press about whether or not that should happen. Some people saying, why would you want to save the house of Walt Whitman? It would be like saving Elvis Presley's house. It would be as outrageous as saving Elvis Presley's house. Well, of course, that debate didn't hold. And so, it was saved. And now Elvis Presley's house is also saved. And it's been a guiding light and a flagship for poetry on Long Island for 70 years now. So I'm pleased with the opportunity to help the Walt Whitman Birthplace do that. As I am pleased to do this triangulation project for the second season. This is season 2, episode 3 of Poets Building Bridges. And as I think you all know, the concept of this is to bring groups of poets from different locations around the globe, the United States, overseas, various locations together to share. And today we're going to be doing that with a group from Florence, Massachusetts, a group from Kansas City, Missouri, thereabouts, or collected around there, and a group from Colombia. It's 35 degrees in Kansas City. I don't know what the temperature is in Florence, but in María del Castillo, Sucerquia, her Barranquilla, Colombia, it's 86 degrees right now, Fahrenheit. So we can all sit here very jealous of the beautiful conditions there. We'll get started right away. I'm going to introduce Tommy Twilite, who I've been working with for a number of years now, from where he's with the Northampton, Florence area. And he's got a great radio show that's on Tuesday nights at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. He plays poetry, reads poetry, and plays music that's got poetic content to it. He's a fine poet in his own right. You can see him banging a drum at many of the beat poetry festivals around the country. Please welcome Tommy Twilite.
Thanks, George. It's a pleasure to be here. I thank you for inviting the Florence Poets. I'm the founding co-director of the Florence Poets. My co-founder passed away several years ago, the great Carl Russo, a wonderful inspiration for poetry, for people to find their voice from poetry. We produce a book every year, the Silkworm. George has been in the book several times, and this is our 15th edition, just came out a little while ago. Good stuff. I'd like to go first with our group, and then I'll have Howie, and then I'll have Bruce. And we'll read I'm going to read about 4 poems, I think, and then I'll pass it off to Howie, and it should be a good thing. So you don't want us to share, like screen sharing or something with the text. I'm just going to read the poem. Is that correct?
Yeah, simpler is better.
Yeah, okay. All right. It's a beautiful day here in Florence, Massachusetts. Maybe it's about 45 degrees, maybe almost 50 degrees, which is unusual for February. But the sun is shining, and it'll be nice to be outside after the meeting here and take a little stroll around the town. Let's start with the beauty of the day. The beauty of the day. Whisper, whisper falling, leaves from green to gold, autumn flame burning, orange, bright and bold. Red energy sun, brilliant blue, falling, falling into my soul. And when everything dies back to brown, falling, falling like frost hard and cold, bare trees silhouette against the gray of sky, and I will pray for the beauty of the day. If she were stone. If she were stone, dance without music, without movement, her toes scratched the sidewalk, etched lines into concrete. If she were stone, then pick flowers, set the birds on fire, call down the rain to quench the smoldering feathers before they crash in flame. I came to her early, before the moon made her cold, before stars could touch her body, before the wind became old. I speak to her. A leaf falls from her shoulder. I freak for her gaze. She don't remember. She don't care. She won't answer. She's not afraid. If she were stone with broken marble arms from a marble quarry, an old Italian quarry, would she consider me for one single moment? Would she want to know who I am or what I have to say? If she were stone, I cry out to her, and it would matter if she was listening. This is a piece for my son, my late oldest son, Tomas, and I just read this in his memory and keep him in my heart. It's called Still Life. Let us squish these color tubes onto our fingers, smear them across this board with a knife, carve them into sunset, because nobody paints anymore. Painting is dead. I would draw you a picture with this nib. I wish I could, but it has been a long time since I've even seen one. And are they made from love anymore? Do they still draw the blood that runs in rivulets of dark black brilliance down her back? Yellow sapwood, powder bleeding, red oxide into ochre, graphite, charcoal, egg, white tempera, what have you, rubbed on her face like war paint, the scent of turpentine, sharpened to a point in your mind and rubbed sideways for effect with this pencil or this brush. whose squiggles and symbols make lines of light that tear glyphs across a sky made of paper. Black and white. It's all black and white, come shades of gray. No, that's not right. Not even night can bring us back to these tools worn smooth by our human hands, long gone archaic, as now we click away on electronic junk. It has turned us all into morons. I want to tell him it is okay. Pick them up, these sticks, these frayed and frazzled ends of ruin, and embrace the tactile idea that I love him, that I've always loved him, if that means anything in the abstract, that these words represent a sound that represents something profound and simple and beautiful, that I love him so much. From the time I first held him in my hands, a tiny mulet covered in fine black down, almost too weak to cry or even feed, until today, when the passion of his black eyes and powerful flecks of his almond skinned body is almost too much to bear, knowing his pain. Yet, I know he cares. I know how hard it is for him to say what he feels, how the loneliness of the fools he must suffer burns him inside, how it hurts me to watch. There's distance here, something to be learned, something to be handed down, something that doesn't make sense. A lack of focus and meaning that I can't seem to grasp. Something to be explained and then forgotten. Something in the brain, random, broken, like a stick under the bed, like all those pencils in his desk, like all these brushes hardened with dried paint, and his painful swollen toe, and like the other one too, brown and beautiful. And there is longing too for something that is still here and always will be here, but now gone missing. I have one more piece for you, and then I'll put Howie on. And so I'm also a songwriter. I did a little gig last night where I play at local clubs and write songs. And it's funny how sometimes a poem will become a song, or a song is a poem. There's a line there, but it's all part of the same thing. And George can relate to what I speak of, because his album with the Onomonious Circus just came out, and it's a beautiful thing. I guess they're going to do a release in New York later on in March, but we understand these things that we do are oral as well as written, and also music is part of what we do. And so this is my piece called Broken Arms. The great tree gave up her soul to the universe with a silent cry that echoed across the sky. No one on earth heard this. There was no ceremony, no memory, no tribute. It just was what was, the release, the letting go of a spirit long held within. After a time, months, perhaps years, the massive and mighty limbs she had held aloft for so many human lifetimes fell with a crack that shattered the tranquility of the forest like a bomb. Again, there was no human witness, just silence, and the forest resumed its usual grace. Today, as I happen upon her earthly shell, I recognize the magnificent ruin, touch her broken arms, and contemplate the hollow of her open womb. At broken arms, what is seen as soul is split off inside her id-ego, some consciousness held up 100 years and maybe a lot more. Long gone before one arm falls to me, calls to me across this cracked ice. Patterns form and break under rocks and dreams. Ice creeps underfoot, bubbles up from underneath. New insects carve hieroglyphs no one can read. I go mad thinking it's all about me. Already too late for the forest floor, a carpet of dry leaves, down from the autumn, down from the autumn. Trunk opens hollow to the world inside. I could go there, huddled within, worn smooth from the weather, bleached out pink and blue like the sky, make purchase for orange slate moss, green shale mushrooms, pillows of grass, inside the heart, inside the soul of this old tree. Thank you. Now I'd like to introduce my great friend and a wonderful poet, Howie Faerstein.
Thank you, Tommy. Thank you, George. Thank everybody, the whole world. I thank everyone. I'm going to read a poem to start that I just finished. Upon hearing King Pleasure sing, it might as well be spring. In a lightless hour, I can't tell how many organisms inhabit the towering hemlock, how they wait safe from horned owl, how they ignore lashing wind, icy squabbling, recrimination. I never realized baby Jesus was circumcised. Would our world be less maimed if more people were aware? I've asked, but no one is available for comment. I'm not waiting, and not for spring. Whether or not I survive, it will appear. Ever since spectral algorithms took precedence in those predicted analytics, I've become befuddled. In an earlier millennium, fifth graders without duress voted me class president. Snug under comforter, I reach for my missing partner, whisper how I love her, how I'd rake oak leaves of 10 autumns, then drag full barrels over winter sleet straight through April mud. Then another dream, waking before dawn, having breakfast in the starless carnival, coffee, a bagel buttered or spread with soft cheese, the cat lapping water. There must be a dozen species waiting for first light. Why would I expect it any different? That night at the gaslight, when Van Ronk snapped the string, he continued, tying on a new one with his teeth, never halting, his fingers bleeding like Coltrane practicing in a hotel room till his reed was soaked red. No one brings roses. All I'm saying as I close all the windows, I love rain when I hear it. I don't need to see it. This next one is a poem for the great Gerald Stern, who died just, I don't know, I think about a month ago, maybe it was 2. It's called I Had to Use a Shovel for I Couldn't Lift It in My Arms, for Gerald Stern. Out my front door days after Jerry's death, or was it the same day or days before, retrieving morning paper sprawled over median stripe, raccoon, size of yearling bear, blood staining striped tail, yellow double lines. One time neighbor, deaf mute Ted, stopped his car, shook his head, pounded his chest with his good right hand, as they do in synagogue on the high holy days. Blowflies first hovering, then feeding on the shoulder, then frenzied turkey vultures joined by black vultures tearing chunks of matted flesh. Maybe it was the same day Jerry died, not that it matters. Raccoon dead, music still playing, Jerry singing, never dead. This one is called In It for the Carpentry. I thought I saw a goldfinch pluck alive from an evangelical's mouth. Maybe, like the 17-year brood X cicadas, the time for swarming is now. I'd restore my rocks and shells to our lacerated planet, but won't live long enough to return to their origin, to be rescued or not. Imagine camels in our pre-Adamic hemisphere, eggshell fragments in a dinosaur nest, the terra, fossilized remains from Hell Creek, Montana. Calculating how long since attending a wake, what may be needed is the cleansing offered by funerals. There's no confusion facing a suddenly raging arroyo, only a scramble to higher ground. Capitalizing on the lethal virus, 6 million deaths and counting, an influencer's line of face masks sold out in hours. As Miro said, meaning comes later. On Bridge Street, there's forever a fish crow cawing hoarsely by the liquor store, following a raven over Taos Mountain at the outset of our new century and walking into the Adobe Inn. Frank Morgan was blowing monks, well, you needn't. A bebop epiphany in a hip-hop world. Of course, it's all madness. I want to be awake when I die. Okay, this is a bit longer. This one's called Once This Poem. And this will be in a new book called Stay, which should be out in a couple of weeks. It's the last poem in the book. Once this poem meant all things, as a grandfather of boys, father to women, as gardens in drought, as waxwings in snow, by the wild sarsaparilla trail, past the synagogue of tailors, past the synagogue of furriers, in this universe where everything moves away from everything else. I don't know why, so young, stumbling from love to loss and back again, stumble bum. Now it could mean I'm older. It could mean it's getting hotter. I don't know yet. May never know. It's a poem in the making, certainly not one meaning all things, though when it began, I thought I was certain. This poem rooted where rooting is difficult, a quaking bog in Massachusetts where carnivorous bladderwort, sundew, and pitcher plant share life, where fireflies begin flashing, when bats end their twilight run. Months will fly by, a freeze will set in. Soon after, it's hot again. Colossal white pines, a touchstone. Black-eared kites in India tumble from the heavens. Banyan branches sway in heat in the still of the night. Whether I think it or not, what I was, I am. This poem means caterpillars that devour their host, their upside-down banded colors deepening to forest green, a vulture dodging traffic on the turnpike, risking for carrion. This poem rooted in a November hour, sitting on the slip-covered couch with mom and dad, watching Jack Ruby assassinate the president's assassin, and in a sweltering August, air-conditioned bedroom, our child hours from birth, as the criminal resigned a half-century ago. As Spirea follows Forsythia, as flowering almond follows Spirea. Here, the 15 glass panel door, the unrelenting windows, bookcase of the future, sacramental stovepipe, switchbacks of the past. As azalea follows witch hazel, as rhododendron follows lilac, shoes without feet, a floor to walk, as common crows strutting, as paper wasps building. I don't know why darkness always precedes light, or why light always succeeds darkness. In the end, what does the poem mean? What does the heart know? Okay, I guess one more. This one's called 9 minutes and 29 seconds. In the first 60 seconds, I kept watch on the towering sugar maple. I counted limbs growing from its trunk and limbs growing from those limbs. I tallied 10. Then there were all the side branches to add. Night air outside the open window was cool with a subtle breeze. In that second minute, twilight showed the contrasting buff and black of a bobolink's head. I wondered how much bend was left in the bough, how it reached toward the risen moon, how it stretched beyond the roof. In the third minute, I saw palm-shaped leaves lengthening, aphids scaling veins. I wondered how much rot infested the bowl, if carpenter ants tunneled through the stems. There was a quickening in the fourth minute. Early May fireflies lit up the street and the multi-lobed leaves began to breathe. The sound was deafening. In the fifth minute, a garter snake coiled around the tree's base, then slithered through a thicket of saplings. I saw it flick its forked, black-tipped red tongue. I saw it retract it. In the sixth minute, a sapsucker began its rhythmic drumming. Loosened bark dropped to the grass. Scolding house wrens rattled when a red-tailed shadow crossed over. In the seventh minute, a spider was taken by a sparrow. Wind came up and the maple's dense crown waved like cornstalks. Patches of blue sky slipped like ice through the night in the eighth minute. Then the ninth minute, when there were no longer any minutes, not the minute before or the second after, not the first spring migrant, not the last blooming aster. Suffocation, nothing o'clock. For 9 minutes and 29 seconds, we watched the man cuffed and pinned to the pavement, repeating over and over, "I can't breathe." We heard his call for his mama, the full weight of a cop on his neck, the man's breath extinguished. Thank you. Thank you. And now I guess Bruce is going to be reading. Bruce Bynum. Unmute, Bruce.
You hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Welcome all poets building bridges. This, I'm going to read a few poems from one of my collections called The First Bird. This is the prologue to The First Bird. Prologue. Out of his marriage with the sky, the first bird pulled courage in a bottomless barrel of apples, then a crimson bosom full of flowers and rusted nails. Tearing under his eyelids, he saw the stars reversed, staring back at him from his other identity, like he was under the hood of some driverless car, out of control, heading for the wreck. He arrived on Earth, and all the creatures bowed to him, with nothing else left to be said. Bird's idol. He had faith in the earth, faith that she would dream into existence a species more sentient, more luminous than he. He had faith in the deeper music moving under the surface of every life, heard through his fingers, touched in his drums, felt as a peculiar destiny working itself out in the rounding of stones, in attachments, casual losses, swimming like leaves and illuminated fish through the waters, the minutes of a common day. He had faith when he dreamed. He looked under his eyelids, memory and color from germinal hours, met at the gates of other lives, more vast, more tranquil than his own. When he fell through sleep, the sleep of the turtle and the rainbow, he was visited by those beyond death and life. He took the red imprisoned in rubies, made a new blood, a new blood that did not dry in the desert and was known by the kinsmen of earlier tribes. He knew among blackbirds and eels there was a ragged secret about the heart of men hidden from science, harsher than the religions of the desert and the skull. At midnight, when angels softened, his eyes were filled with semen and gold, every song returning to its author, every bird reinventing the sensation of flight, every father reimagining himself, his heart, his coiling wisdom reawakened in his son. So he took his own song, subject to of every type, resin, rough exterior of an orange. He calibrated a new path, past the onion, the smell of new rubics, new fabrics, the toil of dying bees and mysterious air of the poisoned earth. He walked into the night, beyond the cities, quiet, unscripted, a cat walking over scattered white stones, until he came to a new beach, older than his birth in a previous life, luscious and opal, darker, sweeter than the juice of a wild blackberry. The first bird giving birth. When his belly swelled beyond the usual borders, he thought the fish he had eaten was bad, gas-trapped, expanding at an exponential rate. When the kicking began, he felt the earth giving up its dead from the last war, taking no prisoners, exotic weapons having been licensed by even the smallest nations. When the labor began, he felt the continents drifting apart, giraffes on one side, reptiles and burrowing beasts on the other, flailing about the sky, unable to make a lasting decision. When the blood burst, the water ran, and at the bulb at the base of his spine began to sing, he thought the second coming of Christ had been rescheduled centuries earlier than the prophecies had foretold. The new conquerors arriving with an army failing the test of forgiveness. When the vulva opened, the egg popped out, the swinging doors waving like dark fins in a swamp. He was horrified at his own creation, marveling at the same time on the perfect ellipse of its shape, the Euclidean dreams it would inspire. When the egg hatched, when the perfect inner kingdom exploded out, he got to choose from among fables of the misshapen, children of the snakes, an owl's skull recovered from the forbidden forest, and where the trees move by their own will, and pilgrims give up all hope. First bird at a lynching. When he smelled the carcass from the tree burning like carrion of no other, Bird knew he had come to the lowlands of souls at the river's bottom. He knew them. He recognized them from another life. They had come back to him from another journey he was trying desperately to forget. Was it Milai or Thermopolis or Goyet caves by the Hill of Bones, where he sacrificed burning human genitals? Hope smoke would rise from the gods of fertility and vampire, revive him psychically in his own blood, make him feel bright, confuse his vision of white with light, so he could collapse in on himself, contract like them, lose the radiant halo that had rose from the spine through the dark fire of inner life, thinner than an optic nerve, carrying a force that would lead him beyond all this. Bird deep down knew everybody. He knew everybody already knew this, but was confused at how many paths to light one could take, get lost in, get frightened, become paralyzed with terror or guilt. And that was not his complete journey, because it became wrapped around the diminishing identity of his skin. Then one became darkness, he realized. Bird left all this with resolve. He would demand from God a hearing from the great council. Standing in the shadow of all world governments, he would plead sublime ignorance. declare it all a vast hoax of entangled thoughts and emotions spinning over the outer rim of some nameless creation. They would believe him. He would know he was on the right path. Bird's knowledge. Bird knew his sexual fluids were no match for the beauty of God. So he gathered the animals of his sleep together, questioned them one by one what they would do if by chance they encountered the luminous mystery of their appearance here among shadows, aphids, and the stars of the firmament. Carpenter ants became his disciple, but he rejected them, their hosannas, their cries for mercy. Bees orbited his head, as did mosquitoes, butterflies, and the inscrutable loons with their wailing, fog-deep, elemental song. He mastered these wave fronts where music began, unraveled the prophecies of the bats. When a child asked him why the full moon hung low in the sky like a pregnant wolf about to give birth, he pointed to the Holy Land, the halos around the heads of the saints. And one more. First bird convalescing. When his eyes were removed by the great surgeon, he could see the lost planets of his youth, their atmospheres discarded, their rare flora and fauna on the forest on full display for his analysis and taxidermy experiments. When they told him about his stomach, how the useless cells had been replaced by silica and more enduring products, he thanked them for their expertise, their handling of subtle explosives, their way of carving out his only visible spots where the camera barely reached, and the skull and the skin grew back over decades. When he heard about the bones, the need for adjustments, the clever prostheses for the finger joints he had received, even happy that science had come so far, so incredibly fast since the days of the swinging towers, the electricities from the storm, the hopping muscles of the frog's legs sliding across the surface of the dissecting table with a subtle touch from the scalpel. All would be well as he lay on the bed, nurses swimming by like automated saints, the bud bags at his feet filling with his elixir, going from red to pink, clear. Thank you.
Good, great. That's our Florence, Massachusetts contingent. Tommy, Howie, and Bruce, thank you guys all for joining us. Central Massachusetts, near Northampton, one of the, for centuries now, for a century and a half, a hotbed of progressivism and intellectual fomentation for all of America, the Northampton area, and long may that reign. When Sojourner Truth left Brooklyn, left actually, lower Manhattan, changed her name to Sojourner Truth and walked across Long Island and caught a boat right here in Huntington, Walt Whitman's Huntington. Across, she was headed for Northampton to be with the abolitionists in the 1840s, 1845 or so. So very strong national and international influence. Thank you all for joining us. Next up, I'm going to introduce Shawn. Got a group that, well, we say they're from Kansas City. It's because I saw all of them at one point in time in Kansas City at Prospero's Books, and we did some work together at Prospero's Books, and great bookstore in Kansas City. But it is a vortex and a crossing point for people, I suppose, all the way from St. Louis to Cleveland, to come and visit on their way to various locations. So it is a vortex. In fact, the three guys here from Kansas City today are, one of them's in Bell, Missouri, I'm pretty sure. Another of them's in Lindborg, Kansas. I'm pretty sure. And Shawn himself, I think, is actually from Kansas City, where everybody you meet is in a band, he says. So terrific people. And it's a pleasure to introduce them now. Just understand that you can talk to each other back channel or in the chat room, if you want to meet with each other and talk to each other and share information. And that goes for anybody here that's visiting with us today from New York, Florence, Kansas City. We got Bruce Johnson, we got Francine Will, we got who else we got from New York? We got J.R. Turk, Judy Turek, and I saw Margaret Wall before. We have people from California, Evan Nyquist, and we do have Hilda Mar Rodriguez from Colombia visiting with us today as well, a distinguished professor there. So we have a wide range of people participating or listening in, so feel free to talk to each other. Now, please welcome for the Kansas City segment of our reading today, Shawn Pavey.
Thanks, George, and special thanks to the Walt Whitman Birthplace and Poetrybay Productions for putting this all together today. I thought we'd start with Jason Ryberg, who is the publisher at Spartan Press, among several other imprints. He's also unofficially the poet laureate of every rusted out GMC box truck. So Jason Ryberg.
Oh man, that's a heavy duty. That's a lot of burden, man. I thought you were just going to say 39th and Bell. I'd be happy with that, but I think I've been deposed since then. But thank you guys for letting us be a part of this. Shawn, John, and I are kind of we sort of all orbit Kansas City in different orbits, and I've been out at the same place John's been for quite a while, out in Bell, Missouri, which is a few hours from Kansas City. It's an arts residency program, and I'm currently doing a smaller one here in Lindsborg, Kansas, which is about as centrally located as it gets in the United States. So yeah, I'm just I guess I'll start off with a couple. This one is in honor of Walt himself, or Uncle Walt. On the road with Uncle Walt and Juice Newton. Woke up to the ancient alarm clock radio blaring next to my head with the latest mayhem from around the world and the fairly advanced stages of a Walt Whitman beard that I swear wasn't there when I went to bed. And it's something about rockets fired into crowds armed with rocks. And I'm wondering suddenly if today wouldn't be one of those days better devoted to drinking, to driving around the country back roads, drinking beer and picking wildflowers wherever I find them. And suddenly I'm there in a whirlwind of activity. It has been decided and enacted, and I am driving down a classic American country road with a stag tall boy between my legs and Juice Newton's playing with the Queen of Hearts of all things, crackling out of the AM radio oldies channel, and somehow I know all the words, yes, by heart, and I'm belting it out like I'm in the band, and all I've had for breakfast is half a bagel, some kind of B complex vitamin, and a beer. Thinking that I really should get that broken driver's side tail light fixed one of these days before my luck finally runs out. And while this is all probably ill-advised, it's okay, because the point is I'm here, and I have become the invisible, all-seeing eye of the poem, maybe somebody else's poem, I don't know, roving about the classically bucolic American countryside, tethered to nothing and beholden to no one. And I'm thinking how I'd love to have old Uncle Walt in the passenger seat next to me, singing along to Juice Newton, or hanging his smiling head out of the window like a golden retriever or yellow lab, drunk and delirious on wind and sun, or standing next to me, laughing like madmen as we piss all our worldly cares away in a roadside ditch with wildflowers in our hair, wildflowers in our pockets, wildflowers in our fast approaching afternoon nappy time dreams. Thank you. This is a poem called A Guided Tour of the Seemingly Banal. This hat has been a home to many heads that have hung heavy with woe. This bottle has only a few golden swallows of summer left in it. Drink up. This tin cup sitting on this cracked and mossy headstone is somehow never empty of shadows. This cowbell swinging in the wind from a barbed wire fence post has been silenced by an empty wasp's nest. This rickety chair was forced to sit facing the corner for being naughty and disobedient in a previous life. This hobo's patchwork rag bag is stuffed with the names of things that no longer exist for good reason. Best not to open it. This is an old 78 record of a forgotten poet whistling an unrecognizable tune in an empty theater that was torn down decades ago. This sad and lonesome tuba, always the fat kid of musical instruments, languishing for 20 years in a pawn shop window, its memories of high school marching bands having mostly faded away, still dreams of one day sitting in with Tom Waits. This matchbox once belonged to a famous blues or rockabilly singer. They say it could carry everything he owned. This dollhouse has a shy, tiny ghost that haunts its attic. This is a closet full of skeletons. This is a drawer full of skeleton keys. This is a receipt for Chinese takeout folded into an origami unicorn. If you look close enough, you can see scrawled there the number for a phone booth by the side of a lonely stretch of Arizona highway. They say every now and then, when the proper cosmic components are properly aligned and at play, someone will answer. Well, that was more laborious than I meant to be, sorry. It was a little shorter. It's called Closet Full of Skeletons, Belly Full of Gin. I'm assuming everybody remembers Ray Harryhausen, one of the great American artists of the 20th century that more or less created the stop motion animation from all those Sinbad movies and things like that. Vaguely plays a part in this poem. I was fine with the Cyclops. I was cool with the dragon even. I was full on hunky-dory with the giant two-headed eagle and the iron collie statue suddenly coming to and doing a little freaky deaky whirling dervish six-armed scimitar dance of death. Hell, I didn't really even flinch much at the big snake with a woman's head where the goddamn snake's head should have been. But for some reason, when that grinning troop of plinkety-clankety skeletons came high stepping out of the closet like it was Mardi Gras at midnight, I woke up sweating and screaming Hollywood style and swore to Shiva, Yahweh, and the great Earth Mother that I'd never have microwave burritos and bathtub gin before bed again. Amen to that, brothers and sisters. Am I running on? Tell me, somebody give me the
No.
All right.
Yeah, go on, keep going.
All right, it's called Drunk in a Bar in Kandahar. Yes, I know there's no bars in Kandahar, but it rhymed. I think my uncle used to say that too. Drunk in a bar in Kandahar. She had a wicked straight razor for a smile and rocket fuel for blood. Her soul was a mighty sunflower stalk towering from a 5-gallon bucket in which local legend held something had drowned before she was even born. She was the absentee landlady of a halfway house for recovering adrenaline junkies. She lived on a steady diet of martinis, pills, and cigarillos. She had high-tech security cameras for eyes. Her pilot light constantly needed to be relit by whichever man or woman or non-binary of the moment that she picked up on her frequent nightly forays, incursions, reconnaissance missions. Rumor had it she slept most of the day on an ancient chaise lounge that Freud allegedly lost to Jung in a game of canasta. Nobody had seen her in a month of Sunday school classes. Her father said she was probably drunk in a bar in Kandahar or dead in a ditch in Mogadishu. But still, every night in my lonely 4th-floor attic apartment, I'd put on my headphones and fire up my ham radio, hoping to catch even the faintest trace of her flickering phantom frequency. Here we go. Uncle Mikey's hard night out the door, no time for breakfast of champions. One highball glass etched with fishermen, wrestling bass, or a flock of ducks suddenly taking flight. One can of beer, hams, Olympia, PBR or stag, 2 raw eggs, chicken, duck, or goose. There will most likely be a few trace elements of mud, shit, and straw. 1 bottle of hot sauce, Frank's Red Hot, Cholula, Sriracha, whatever you got. Pour beer in glass, let the head die down. Crack eggs into beer, watch out for bits of shell, as well as the aforementioned mud, shit, and straw. Add 4 or 5 healthy shakes of hot sauce. Do not mix or stir. Kill it quick. Now scoot. A few finer plot points you may have missed on here. What about the rocking chair on the front porch of the old sanitarium? Rocking back and forth with a ghost of the wind's nervous energy? What about the boiling pot of who knows what left unattended on the stove? What about the ancient night watchman making his rounds through the collective dream world of whoever may be sleeping at any given moment? What about the lone gypsy prince wearing Picasso's hat and Dolly's mustache, barreling down I-70 at midnight on his magnificent chrome machine? What about bouquets of weeds and wildflowers as metaphors for any occasion? What about the meek little man answering his master's call with queen to bishop 6? Checkmate, I think. What about the haunted player piano, spontaneously erupting now and then with Chopin's mazurkas and W.C. Handy's stomps and boogies, and even the occasional Gilbert and Sullivan? What about the glass eye, possessed by the spirit of its previous owner, waiting for the right person to come along? What about the bluebird, trapped in the boarded up warehouse, fluttering frantically for a way out? What about the bottle rocket, shot by the tow-headed kid in the first act, that has apparently been smoldering all this time on the wood shingle roof of the Pentecostal church? What about the vacuum left by the frequent and conspicuous absence of hope, that red-headed, hair-lipped little stepchild of the world, just when it's needed the most? What about the bride without a head? What about the lone wolf without a foot? Thank you.
All right, next up, John Dorsey, who was the first poet laureate of Bell, Missouri, and is poet in residence at the Osage Arts Community in Bell, Missouri. John.
Thank you, Shawn. Thank you, George, for doing this. I've had the honor of actually reading in person at the Birthplace. It's a wonderful place if you get the opportunity to read there or just to be there. It's well worth your time. Thank you, everybody. All right. I'm going to read a few Missouri poems. This is a piece about our local pool hall, or one particular night there anyway. It's called Sundown at the Redneck Carnival. Gordon Lightfoot plays on the jukebox as a dozen guys in flannel test their strength while pounding light beer by the pitcher. As a young boy with a mullet wanders the room, looking as lost as he'll ever be, the ghost of his own future, a smudge of dirt on his cheek, or maybe it's printer's ink, the Lindbergh baby left to rot without the ransom note. Neglect is a tattoo he will never be able to wash off. The prettiest girl in town is pregnant for the third time in 3 years. The way she sways her hips is an omen. She pours drinks and becomes a wingless canary, singing for tips in a cage filled with stale smoke. The song says you'd better beware as the claw machine drops a stuffed teddy bear with a bright red tongue. But Gordon Lightfoot might as well be talking to the dead. Nobody listens for warnings here. As the boy dreams of his father, long gone, he imagines he's a grizzly with a silent tongue and bright red fists, who would never raise a hand in anger, who's only there to wipe his face clean. Okay. I'm going to read this longer poem. In Bell, Missouri, we have a town fair every year, and you should know that our population there is like 99.9% Caucasian. And so there was a pregnant girl at the end of her driveway wearing a Tupac Shakur t-shirt on the day of the fair, and I just wanted to know where the hell she got that shirt. So I wrote this poem imagining that. It's called East Coast, West Coast in Southern Missouri. A high school girl with thick black glasses and a baby bump barely concealed by a secondhand Tupac t-shirt stands on the front of her lawn as a volunteer fireman who didn't make it past the 9th grade throws candy in her direction with a pitching arm that will never take him any further than the next county over. A love story held together with tape, like the glasses, peeling in the summer sun, candy corn at her feet like stray bullets in a gang war, in a music video that will last the rest of her life. A baby under each arm, pacing east and west, a drive-by that goes in circles leading nowhere, always in a rivalry with possibility. Maybe the old owner of the shirt fed the hungry, danced in an empty swimming pool, and swore there was music that nobody else could hear. Or maybe she actually saw who killed Tupac and Biggie both, and never said a word, because there was peace in just letting things go, like the boy who placed the shirt over her shoulders as she shivered, taking what she hadn't offered to begin with. Because when you wash out the blood stains, all you're left with is your own heartbreak, standing on your front lawn, wearing someone else's dream, shrunken down so many times with wrinkles that you can never quite smooth out, until you're almost invisible, with a snow cone melting down your arm in the sun, bleeding red, white, and blue. as a single sock fresh out of the dryer sticks to your belly, and that's the best part of your day. And I'm going to end this with a very short Missouri poem. And just thank you again for letting us do this. Thank you, Shawn. This is my feeling on Missouri, and this is a poem called In Missouri, It Is Your God-Given Right to Pee Anywhere You Like. In Missouri, it is your God-given right to pee anywhere you like. Into an overgrown field of dandelions that take us back into the past, alongside a parked car on some make-out mountain where your parents made their first youthful mistakes, written in the constitution of a younger man's imagination, that mischievous flair for youthful abandon still showing on your guilty, dirt-smudged faces, the kind of songs where nobody has to say they're sorry for watering the grass.
Thanks, John. And it's true. You can do that in Missouri. Okay, so I'm just going to read a couple because I know we're working on some time issues here. I've been playing around with the short poem and very short poems. This first one is called Surprise Ending. This story begins and ends with a monkey. Sometimes it's not even me. The next poem starts with a line from Paul Konecki and is with apologies to both Paul and William Wordsworth, the other WW. Tonight is a river and a bell. Tonight in Kansas is a wind blowing in from the south, is a pink moon obscured by branches thick with spring leaves, is a late model sedan speeding down 25 mile per hour streets, is a lamppost burning yellow in some empty deep dark. Tonight in Kansas is a wooden porch with chairs and a table but no light, is a tangential exploration of memory down through mists of remembered time, is a rehashing of all humiliations suffered in a life so far, is a revisiting of sadness and loss in an empty, deep, dark. Tonight in Kansas is a disposable mask, fluttering and dancing in the breeze, is a sound of songbirds singing among dark leaves, is a book of poems to read before sleep, is a kiss from my wife in this deepest starlit night. This is a poem called Stunted Spring. Let a cold mist fall on an early spring day, blazing a light covering of snow. Quiet, except for a prairie wind battering trees in the backyard. Listen and hear the winter's dead limbs crack and crash into the hard earth, still rigid with cold, and you will know you are still in Kansas and that winter is not done with you. No, not with you. And this last poem, how about something fun? This is a late morning gully washer and a perfect pot of coffee. Let's stay inside and play those Small Faces records. Maybe some pre-MTV Jay Giles band, Diamond Dogs era Bowie, some Rebel. Let's dance our hearts out in the gloom. The floor is swept and we have the room. Crank it up, baby, play it loud and make those dishes in the kitchen cupboard clink. Baby, make those glasses shake. We can rattle the dust loose and play that blues record. You know the one. Muddy Waters, oh darling, that's it. I'll be your hoochie coochie man. Better yet, I'll be the man you need me to be. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Excellent. Well done. Shawn Pavey, John Dorsey, Jason Ryberg. It's great to see you guys again. You're welcome here in New York anytime. You guys from Florence as well. Even from Colombia, come into New York, come see us in New York. I'll just say that, Kansas City, as I mentioned with Northampton area, Kansas City is an incredible vortex for the arts in America. I mean, when they tried to straighten things up and clean them up in New Orleans, and jazz had to move out of town and move upriver from New Orleans, looking for a place where there was welcome to have whorehouses and late night places to drink and carouse. Tom Pendergast, the mayor of Kansas City, said, yeah, you can stop here. So that's why Kansas City became right central to the America, the place where jazz continued to grow up from the New Orleans beginnings. And as the only train west from New York to Los Angeles also happened to pass through Kansas City, all of the musicians coming back and forth across the country picked up on what was happening there. So from Count Basie to Charlie Parker was a major source for America's, one of America's truest art forms, jazz. So eternally grateful for that. Even for Tom Pendergast, who still lives on as one of the best bourbons in America to drink, is Tom Pendergast's bourbon. So thank you guys for your presentation. We'll now turn at 1:12 to our third and final group. I'm delighted to welcome to present for the second time in this series, María del Castillo Sucerquia, who has graciously hosted before with some South American people before, but this is all Colombia now. She's got people from Colombia at various locations who are with us today. Colombia, of course, being the home to one of the other giants of Western America's literature, Gabriel Garcia Marquez. So walking tall and strong with Whitman and Marquez today is María del Castillo Sucerquia and her friends. Please welcome María.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, George Wallace and Walt Whitman Birthplace people. It's a pleasure to be with you on this second version of what's Building Bridges, a magnificent triangulation project. I'm going to introduce the Colombian poets, Miguel Iriarte and Anabel Torres. I apologize for the poet Adriana Hoyos, who had to attend to personal issues and couldn't be here. Sorry for the background music. Barranquilla is in carnival right now, so it's a crazy week. I will read the short biographies. Miguel Iriarte is a poet, cultural journalist, essayist, and for 25 years, professor of semiotics and communications in Barranquilla. He's considered one of the most representative poets of the Colombian Caribbean coast. He's one of the founders of Poema Rio International Poetry Fest. He has published several books of poetry like Cámara de Jazz, Doy mi palabra, Semana Santa de mi boca, Segundas Intenciones, and others. He's also the editor of the Arts and Culture Review, Villa 40. He's the current director of La Cueva, a distinguished cultural Foundation of Barranquilla. Miguel, thank you for accepting this invitation. We are happy that you are here. We go with you. Miguel, your microphone, we can hear you.
Okay, thanks, dear Maria, for this invitation. Thanks for all the poets crowned today. I'm going to read some of my poems published in this book, Cámara de Jazz. Is the only book translated by Miguel Faerstein, a prominent poet who live in New York. And some pieces from this book, for example, Soul Train. This book is an homage to my favorite jazz man. Soul Train. A train is coming down, roaring from the deep south, carrying a dark sorrow for Alabama. It rumbled with all its soul, soul train, wind snared inside a metal tunnel overwhelmed by tragedy. The sound is perfect and yet painful, hurting us when the perfect blade throws on both sides its metal serpent edge, shrieking and sobbing, regretting, and going down tender tenor until it becomes a thick root of love and death. The sting buried up to the leaf in a marshy history of religious trunks and chains of current iron. I'm here at the edge of the station tracks, waiting for Coltrane to arrive with giant steps, bringing a jazz car for my sorrow. Ornithology. No one ever knew what kind of a bird he was, whether a jarbird or a golden beak, a bird of all omen, or a little bird of prey, a clear-sighted eagle, a winged human being, or perhaps an angel. A songbird that he was and how he sang, that he was a rare bird to one ever denied, whose strange hair beat time inside him and drew a suicide fly on the horrific sky of his fur. How many disturbances were caused by his swerving rage? How many misfortunes did his madness denounce? With Charlie Parker, alto sax reached such heights that no one will ever be able to equal him, because up there, all winds begin to melt. This blues is dedicated to him from all the way down here where a chicken flew has fell all feathers to the ground. at Billy's door. Don't you worry, Billy. No one at this door will stop you from finishing your song. Here, you'll be allowed to enter by the front door, because my soul has no false entrance, because I'm the only dog I know. We'll be here alone, Billy, and you'll be able to scratch my heart with your cat cries. I get a kick from cocaine, and you'll hand me from your son a strange fruit clanging from your vocal cords to pay for some of my sins. Billy, you always had someone ready to stand in front of you and block your way. A damned cop like his country could never understand that you were a goddess, rocked by despair, the only whore who went to heaven. To block your way, Billy, a black bones passing for a while, had you climbed up the same stair through which garbage and shame were thrown down. It's a good thing they couldn't catch you while leaving from your last hospital. It's a good thing you got around the law once again, fleeing through the only door no one could ever control. It's a good thing, really, that you stood everybody up and died. Mr. Ellington pays a visit. Will I ever possess enough music in my heart as to be able to remain forever? It's a phrase from Emile Chorin. Music is knocking at my door, and it won't go away until I leave my heart wide open. What kind of arrangement, what a strange instrument will put away in my ears? Which argument will it use to cast a spell of my time? I couldn't sleep a week last night, for example. It showed up with some of Ellington's musicians and with Ellington himself, all very black coming down from Harlem, ready for a gig in my bedroom. And I was there until a moment ago, trying to shake off my dreams, Anderson's dying muse, and Tisor's mellow tragedy, in an argument which was also a complaint. They were saying something about me in a special arrangement of sad state. Trying, but it happened that Ellington is laughing with all the teeth of his keyboard. He introduced me and catch one of the gods of his orchestra and plays me a solo to break down my resistance. The music keep playing at my door, but I am afraid it won't go away because it has the dosage I need to keep on living. Round about Monk, I can picture Thelonious as a used bottle collector, a genie who turns them into coal to fill his piano with the bottlenecks, unusual jagged edge and dangerous shards for those unable to look at themselves in that gallery of shattered mirrors. Magical monk, mysterious priors, inventing labyrinths in hiding the evidence, getting rid of those who tried following and deceiving them with keyboard tricks. He keeps pulling out of all he has. I can imagine him hanging around the corner of the night, ready to cast what is playing in the city or in the sphere of the universe, filling the piano with Thai abstraction he embellished with his own hair or with the moon, as if someone were adding a twist of lemon to his gin. Blue Moon, Thelonious, vicious cycle containing the keys of a style full of light and shadow over and above racial concerns and bitterness. His structural piano will go down in history, made out of the deepest gospel tree, only to allow the sound of real art, where omission is more important than articulation. Drums battle. We must make with rhythm what Bach did with melody. Max Roach. Drums battle. I've been threatened by friends and neighbors, and even by my wife, when my house has been roaring with the drum head and the sticks of bebop. It's just because I love the sound and the fury of Art Blakey and Kenny Clark and all the black percussive ceremony of what man named it Roach. I envy them. Also, you can imagine how much I suffer with all the lack of appreciation for drums. The ignorant think they only make noise. It's possible. Who knows? That depends. But it's all talk with action that give the orchestra back his playfulness. It opens its door to swing, forcing a heart to throw in the silent world of the storm. It was Max who freed the drum from slavery. He forged the paper, giving them new identities so they could flee through the road of melody as someone trekking in the jungle. It happens that when I think of Max, sometimes I feel as if he had a brain on each of his hands, talking to each other, playing the set as they play, as they please, thinking opposite things, making fun and respecting each other, but always working together for a God, the same one who breathed life into the doors because he wanted to create jazz. Thank you. Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here. Really a great pleasure.
Thank you, Miguel. for accepting this invitation, especially in this carnival season when artists and cultural managers are usually very, very busy having fun. Thank you for joining this poetry party. Well, now we go with Anabel Torres. Anabel, can we check your microphone, please?
Okay, there it is. Hi.
It's working.
You can hear me. Yeah, it's working.
Yeah. And now we're happy to listen to your poems. I'm going to read you. Anabel Torres Restrepo is a poet and translator. She studied modern languages at the University of Antioquia in Medellin and obtained a master's at the Institute of Social Studies in The Hague. She was the assistant director at the National Library of Colombia. Books: Casi Poesía, La Mujer del Esquimal, Las Bocas del Amor. Poemas: Medias Nonas, Poemas de Guerra, En un abrir y cerrar de ojos, Agua herida, El origen y destino de las especies de la fauna masculina paisa. Awards: Poetry National Awards, University of Nariño, Poetry National Awards, University of Antioquia, Rol Danillo Poetry National Awards, Ediciones Embalaje, Museo Rayo, and others. Go ahead, Anabel.
Thank you. Hello. Good evening here and good morning there. Colombia is the country I live with, but I actually live now in Sevilla, in Sanlúcar la Mayor, in Spain. I'm going to read from this book. It's a very little book. It's called Human Wrongs, and it was published in Mallorca because I won a small competition there for poetry written in English. I say small because we were very few contestants, so I won the contest. Stopover in Madrid. Crouched on the floor of the bus, hauling us to Terminal 3, a little girl clings to her mother's knees. Facing the door, her mother stands looking out through the crystal, about to start this endless mess of becoming a foreigner. Song of your cleaning woman. I have many chores, many homes to clean, windows to shine, pails to empty and fill, and surfaces to mop. But I carry this note. Last night's chores done, today's yet to begin. I fold it carefully inside my bag before I leave my rented room. Keeping it safe is my most pressing chore. It is my one magic potion. It is my hope for the hope of my children. This is the telltale sign I leave on tonight's cheek and on tomorrow's sands, to be traced again and again by countless other peoples in the world. Close to my heart, scribbled in pain and frenzy, I carry the word freedom. And though I can't say it in Dutch or French, German or Swedish, here it is intact. I have carried it dearly. Dear to you, it is dear to me too. And this is called Cousin Cesar. 1. Death grows like dust, a speck at a time, and suddenly he is a mound of organic matter, frowning that sometimes smiles upon the bed. Quietness intrudes into all the noises, and the true force of his gaunt face emerges. His eyes gone blind, he will never get to see it. 2. Death shuffles out one dawn, slinks off while the rest of them lay sleeping, spent from the endless vigil, the family, mother, brother, 5 sisters, and 2 aunts. The vigil has made them all lose track of pain and time. It is too much to have to shoo off the sun every day, this being a country in the tropics, to put dampers on music, voices, and the chirping of birds, not just guarding off death, but dodging life, without any of them noticing it. It is too much to feel guilty for sight, as he's gone blind 2 years before, among the many mishaps. To feel guilty for their love when he no longer copes with loving back. After 6 months, I come back to the flat. The sun has licked the walls clean. Fresh plants, tended anew, grow in the balcony. A sorrow I have never seen is chiseled on my aunt's face, along with a strong mending sense of contentment, her sadness whole again. She is at last alone to grieve his absence without the grievance of his discontent. Tentative, awkward, we smile at each other as we pick up the thread of daily chat in our ordinary unstrained voices, carrying across the sofa and the lounge chair, the two of us together again, for she has also voyaged. And my cousin, his face, his eyes and smile of long ago, no longer doomed, but luminous on the freshly painted walls. Now I'm going to read from this book, which is called Wounded Water, Agua Herida, and it was re-edited. It's a bilingual versions because they're not exactly the same when I translate them. And this was published in Mallorca last year by Editorial Duplum. Wounded Water. Days of rain, rivers waded to which I can't return, puddles in which reflected life got trapped and couldn't escape but stayed. Seas that separate, clear waters, murky ponds, and the ocean of heaven with its glow. Lakes in which the moves of love bob up and down. Streams in which memories sink and soar, and passions for the future run amok. Life all in all, springs, wells, reservoirs, fountains, jets, and the liquids of the body, drops, oceans, and placentas, men and women at birth, 80% loved water, wounded water. Oh, sorry. Now and then, the smell of my father, my mother's voice, flags of their being past, awakenings. I speak now, having traversed my mother's voice, she the road, me the flying hoop, bumping along, and having kissed the smell of my dad goodbye after that last Broadway show shared together. Grateful, loving them both, I swing through life's gates, seeking the new sounds and smells of my present life. To Berta and Eddie. More reference to life. They meet at Amsterdam Central Station. It is their first real date. Both wear new clothes. Everything else may be out of control. There are too many uncertain factors in life, too many tests, too few choices, too many redundancies, not enough correct answers. Yet hope always arrives on the platform of life with its broad, foolish grin. Bedtime story for a granddaughter. I went online to kiss Edward Said. I wanted to tell my granddaughter Ana Luna that one day I kissed a knight who didn't fear to wear his shining armor. And this is in love and remembrance of Edward Said. I hope you read him. He was a wonderful man. Fireworks display. From gowlies and ghosties and long-legged beasties and things that go bump in the night. Good Lord, deliver us, Scottish saying. To bring its summer festival to a close, Geneva throws a dazzling display of fireworks overboard from 3 ships near the shore of Lake Leman. It lasts almost an hour, boom, boom, oohs and ahs. Mothers and fathers snuggle their children on their shoulders, wrapped in cotton jackets to protect them from the midnight breeze, so that their offspring may admire this outlandish array of light and sound, all color. Only my eyesight is warped. I can just make out the children far across from Lake Leman, wrapped in the arms of loved ones, clinging to their necks, shivering, screaming. The children of war shall never have fond memories of things that go bump in the night. The glue of the world, the needed stitch at the seams. I am a woman. I am the glue of the world. the needed stitch at the seams, the bulging orange. I am the sought-after tape to put the notice in place, in whichever place I happen to belong. I am the parentheses, bound in or outwards, but always curved. Only my inside is taut, like a stiffened rope thrown out the window. No one can use to escape, least of all myself. I am a mother. My 2 children scrambled on top of me for the best observation post. My left breast is the peak of Mount Everest. I am a woman, and as a woman, what use to me, using for my own benefit the binding properties of my magic saliva, or being the glue of the world? What use to me this wound from which my pretty pain keeps flowing freely?
Thank you.
Please, wait, I have 2 minutes more or one. Okay,
Sure.
I'm sorry I took a look. Visit to New York. I really want to read this one. Loneliness is worn today, and life is like a subway packed with people going home. And I'll read you the last one now, which is called Rubble, Among the Rubble. Today I kissed a stranger on the metro, stroked his forehead. The man looked exhausted, his eyes caved in with sleep. His wife sat next to him, staring at those invisible specks on fingernails women who use nail polish will always find. She didn't budge when he nodded off to sleep. Neither did I, for that matter, for these are the things I do unobserved when I'm outside, not home, in other places. I do them undisturbed, for myself only, in cold blood, a terrorist of life, exploding love among the rubble of my words. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be in New York.
Thank you, Anabel. Great poems. Thank you so much. Thank you, Miguel. George, back to you.
Excellent. One more time, please, for our friends from Colombia, Maria, Miguel, Anabel. Thank you all, although Anabel is in Spain at the moment.
Yeah.
I can tell you that many years ago, when Franco was still in power in Spain, I did travel to Mallorca from Barcelona. It cost $20. It cost $20 to take a boat to Mallorca, but it cost $200 to get off the island. So once they had you there, they had any price they wanted to get you off the island. So it's a very interesting experience for me. I would like to say that, in conclusion to this very fine collaboration that we did today, that this connection really between the Northeast and Kansas City, for that matter, and New Orleans and the Caribbean and South America is a very real one. Walt Whitman was a journeyman reporter for local newspapers here in New York until he went to New Orleans and was exposed to the diversity of Caribbean culture in New Orleans in all of its manifestations back in those days, and came back a transformed artist. So the cultural exchange that we are doing here today is something that is embodied in the work of Walt Whitman. And it was the cultural exchange that he experienced that turned his Anglo-Dutch, Northeast American cultural experience into something that was a worldwide voice. Something we're hoping we can continue to do today in various capacities in our small way. So thank you all from Colombia for being part of this. Thank you all from Kansas City and Florence for being part of this. Florence as well. And those of you from New York and other locations who came to join us, thanks all for joining us. We'll be back next month, about the second Saturday of the next month. We're going to have Santa Cruz, some people from California, starring with Beatnik Ghosts people from Santa Cruz. We're going to have Jeff Wright and his crew from New York Live magazine. And we got a third group. I'm blanking. Yeah, blank on you.
Corsica.
Oh yeah, we've got Catherine Sorba from Corsica and France who's going to be here. So there'll be some French writers and some people from Corsica, which is a very interesting phenomenon. You'll hear a lot more about if you tune in next month. That's Corsica, Santa Cruz, right, and New York City. Thank you all for joining us. Always thank you, Walt Whitman Birthplace and Robert Savino and Heather for officiating today's event. You can see us very soon on YouTube. And until then, till next month, adios. Thank you all for joining us.